Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakter Bhavati Nashtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Satsvarup Goswami, Volume 1, A Lifetime in Preparation, India, 1896 to 1965, Chapter 11, The Dream Come True. So, yesterday we discussed how Prabhupada got the sponsorship from America. Srila Prabhupada, whatever the correspondence was there between the father and son, I do not know. I simply asked him, why don't you ask your son Gopal to sponsor? And now, after 3 or 4 months, the no objection certificate was sent from the Indian consulate in New York to me. He had already sponsored my arrival there for 1 month, and all of a sudden, I got the paper. At his father's request, Gopal Agarwal had done as he had done for several other sadhus, none of whom had ever gone to America. It was just a formality, something to satisfy his father. Gopal had requested a form from the Indian consulate in New York, obtained a statement from his employer certifying his monthly salary, gotten a letter from his bank showing his balance as of April 1965, and had the form notarized. It had been stamped and approved in New York and sent to Delhi. Now Bhaktivedanta Swami had a sponsor, but he still needed a passport, visa, fee form, and travel fare. The passport was not very difficult to obtain. Krishna Pandit had helped, and by June 10th, he had his passport. Carefully, he penned in his address at the Radha Krishna temple in Chippiwada and wrote his father's name, Gaur Mohan Dev. He asked Krishna Pandit also to pay for his going abroad, but Krishna Pandit refused, thinking it against Hindu principles for a sadhu to go abroad and also very expensive. With his passport and sponsorship papers, Bhaktivedanta Swami went to Bombay, not to sell books or raise funds for printing. He wanted a ticket for America. Again, he tried approaching Sumati Morarji. He showed his sponsorship papers to her secretary, Mr. Choksi, who was impressed and who went to Mrs. Morarji on his behalf. The Swami from Vrindavan is back, he told her. He has published his book on your donation. He has a sponsor and he wants to go to America. He wants you to send him on a Scindia ship. Mrs. Morarji said no. The Swamiji was too old to go to United States and expect to accomplish anything. As Mr. Choksi conveyed to him Mrs. Morarji's words, Bhaktivedanta Swami listened disapprovingly. She wanted him to stay in India and complete the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why go to the States? Finish the job here. But Bhaktivedanta Swami was fixed on going. He told Mr. Choksi that he should convince Mrs. Morarji. He checked Mr. Choksi on what he should say. I find this gentleman very inspired to go to the States and preach something to the people there. But when he told Mrs. Morarji, she again said no. The Swamiji was not healthy. It would be too cold there. He might not be able to come back, and she doubted whether he would be able to accomplish much there. People in America were not so cooperative, and they would probably not listen to him. Exasperated with Mr. Choksi's ineffectiveness, Bhaktivedanta Swami demanded a personal interview. It was granted, and a grey-haired, determined Bhaktivedanta Swami presented his emphatic request, please give me one ticket. Sumati Morarji was concerned. Swamiji, you are so old, you're taking this responsibility. Do you think it is all right? No, he reassured her, lifting his hand as if to reassure a doubting daughter. It is all right. But do you know what my secretaries think? They say Swamiji is going to die there. Bhaktivedanta made a face as if to dismiss a foolish rumor. Again, he insisted that she give him a ticket. All right, she said, get your P form and I'll make an arrangement to send you by our ship. Bhaktivedanta Swami smiled brilliantly and happily left her office, past her amazed and skeptical clerks. Now, P form. P form is another, that time it used to be there. A P form, another necessity for an Indian national who wants to leave the country, is a certificate given by the State Bank of India, certifying that the person has no excessive debts in India and is cleared by the banks. That would take a while to obtain, and he also did not yet have a US visa. So he only had the sponsorship form. He needed to pursue these government permissions in Bombay, but he had no place to stay. So Mrs. Morarji agreed to let him reside at the Scindia colony, a compound of apartments for employees of the Scindia company. He stayed in a small, unfurnished apartment with only his trunk and typewriter. The resident Scindia employees all knew that Mrs. Morarji was sending him to the West, and some of them became interested in his cause. They were impressed, for although he was so old, he was going abroad to preach. He was a special sadhu, a scholar. They heard from him how he was making hundreds of copies of his books with him, how he was taking hundreds of copies of his books with him, but no money. He became a celebrity at the Scindia colony. Various families brought him rice, sabji, and fruit. They brought him so much that he could not eat at all. And he mentioned this to Mr. Choksi. Just accept it and distribute it, Mr. Choksi advised. Bhaktivedanta Swami then began giving remnants of his food to children. Some of the older residents gathered to hear him as he read and spoke from Srimad Bhagavatam. Mr. Vasavada, the chief cashier of Scindia, was particularly impressed and came regularly to learn from the sadhu. Mr. Vasavada obtained copies of Bhaktivedanta Swami's books and read them in his home. Bhaktivedanta Swami's apartment shared a roofed-in veranda with Mr. Nagarajan, a Scindia office worker, and his wife. Mrs. Nagarajan, every time when I passed that way, he used to be writing or chanting. I would ask him, Swamiji, what are you writing? He used to sit near the window and one after another was translating the Sanskrit. He gave me 2 books and said, child, if you read this book, you will understand. We would have discourses in the house, and 4 or 5 Gujarati ladies used to come. At one of these discourses, he told one lady that those who wear their hair parted on the side, that is not a good idea. Every Indian lady should have her hair parted in the center. They were very fond of listening and very keen to hear his discourse. Every day he would go out trying to get his visa in P form as quickly as possible, selling his books and seeking contacts and supporters for his future Srimad Bhagavatam publishing. Mr. Nagarajan tried to help. Using the telephone directory, he made a list of wealthy business and professional men who were Vaishnavas and might be inclined to assist. Bhaktivedanta Swami's neighbors at Scindia colony observed him coming home dead tired in the evening. He would sit quietly, perhaps feeling morose, some neighbors thought, but after a while, he would sit up, rejuvenated, and start writing. Mrs. Nagarajan, when he came home, we used to give him courage, and we used to tell him, Swamiji, one day you will achieve your target. He would say, time is still not right, time is still not right. They're all agyanis, they don't understand. But I still must carry on. Sometimes I would go by and his chadar would be on the chair, but he would be sitting on the windowsill. I would ask him, Swamiji, did you have any good contents? He would say, not much today, I didn't get much, and it is depressing. Tomorrow Krishna will give me more details. And he would sit there quietly. After 10 minutes, he would sit in his chair and start writing. I would wonder how Swamiji was so tired in 1 minute, and in another minute, even if he was tired, he was not defeated. He would never speak discouragement, and he would always encourage him. And we would always encourage him and say, if today you don't get it, tomorrow you will definitely meet some people, and they will encourage you. And my friends used to come in the morning and in the evening for discourse, and they would give namaskar and fruits. Mr. Nagarajan, his temperament was very adjustable and homely. our friends would offer a few rupees, and we would say, all right, it will help. He used to walk from one colony to another, our colony to Andheri station. It is 2 kilometers, and he used to go there without taking a bus because he had no money. Bhaktivedanta Swami had a page printed entitled My Mission, and he would show it to influential men in his attempts to get further financing for Srimad Bhagavatam. The printed statement proposed that God consciousness was the only remedy for the evils of modern materialistic society. So despite scientific advancement and material comforts, there was no peace in the world. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the glory of India, must be spread all over the world. Mrs. Morarji asked Bhaktivedanta Swami if he would read Srimad Bhagavatam to her in the evening. He agreed. She began sending her car for him at 6 o'clock each evening, and they would sit in her garden where he would recite and comment on the Bhagavatam. Mrs. Morarji, he used to come in the evening and sing the verses in rhythmic tunes, as is usually done with the Bhagavatam. And certain points, when you sit and discuss, you raise so many points. He was commenting on certain points. But it was all from the Bhagavatam. So he used to sit and explain to me and then go. He could give time and I could hear him. That was for about 10 or 15 days. His backing by Scindia and his sponsorship in the USA were strong presentation, and with the help of the people at Scindia, he obtained his visa on July 28, 1965. But the P-form proceedings went slowly and even threatened to be a last insurmountable obstacle. Srila Prabhupada. Formerly, there was no restriction for going outside, but for a sannyasi like me, I had so much difficulty obtaining the government permission to go out. I had applied for the P-form sanction, but no sanction was coming. Then I went to the State Bank of India. The officer was Mr. Martharachari. He told me, Swamiji, you are sponsored by a private man, so we cannot accept. If you were invited by some institution, we could consider. But you are invited by a private man for 1 month. And after 1 month, if you are in difficulty, there will be so many obstacles. But I had already prepared everything to go. So I said, what have you done? He said, I have decided not to sanction your P-form. I said, no, don't do this. You better send me to your superior. It should not be like that. So he took my request and he sent the file to the chief official of foreign exchange, something like that. So he was a supreme man in the State Bank of India. I went to see him. I asked the secretary, do you have such a such file? You kindly put it to Mr. Rao. I want to see him. So the secretary agreed and he put the file and he put my name down to see him. I was waiting. So Mr. Rao came personally. He said, Swamiji, I passed your case. Don't worry. Following Mrs. Morarji's instructions, her secretary, Mr. Choksi, made final arrangements for Bhaktivedanta Swami. Since he had no warm clothes, Mr. Choksi took him to buy a wool jacket and other woolen clothes. Mr. Choksi spent about 250 rupees on new clothes, including some new dhotis. At Bhaktivedanta Swami's request, Mr. Choksi printed 500 copies of a small pamphlet containing the 8 verses written by Lord Chaitanya and an advertisement for Srimad Bhagavatam in the context of an advertisement for Scindia Steamship Company. Mr. Choksi, I asked him, why couldn't you go earlier? Why do you want to go now to the States at this age? He replied, I'll be able to do something good, I'm sure. His idea was that someone should be there who would be able to go near people who were lost in life and teach them and tell them what the correct thing is. I asked him so many times, why do you want to go to the States? Why don't you start something in Bombay or Delhi or Vrindavan? I was teasing him also, you're interested in seeing the States, therefore you want to go. All Swamijis want to go to the States and you want to enjoy there. He said, what I've got to see, I finished my life. But sometimes he was hot-tempered. He used to get angry at me for the delays. What is this nonsense, he would say. Then I would understand, he's getting angry now. Sometimes he would say, oh, Mrs. Morarji has still not signed this paper. She says, come back tomorrow, we will talk tomorrow. What is this? Why this daily going back? He would get angry. Then I would say, you can sit here. But he would say, how long do I have to sit? He would become impatient. Finally, Mrs. Morarji scheduled a place for him on one of her ships, the Jaladuta, which was sailing from Calcutta on August 13th. She had made certain that he would travel on a ship whose captain understood the needs of a vegetarian and a Brahmin. Mrs. Morarji told the Jalduta's captain, Arun Pandya, to carry extra vegetables and fruits for the Swami. Mr. Choksi spent the last 2 days with Bhaktivedanta Swami in Bombay, picking up the pamphlets at the press, purchasing clothes, and driving him to the station to catch the train for Calcutta. He arrived in Calcutta about 2 weeks before Jalduta's departure. Although he had lived much of his life in the city, he now had nowhere to stay. It was as he had written in his Vrindavan bhajan, I have my wife, sons, daughters, grandsons, everything, but I have no money, so they are a fruitless glory. Although in this city he had been so carefully nurtured as a child, whose early days were also gone forever. Where have my loving father and mother gone to now? And where are all my elders? Where are my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family life is a list of names. Out of the hundreds of people in Calcutta whom Bhaktivedanta Swami knew, he chose to call on Mr. Shishir Bhattacharya, the flamboyant Kirtan singer he had met a year before at the governor's house in Lucknow. Mr. Bhattacharya was not a relative, not a disciple, not even a close friend, but he was willing to help. Bhaktivedanta Swami called at his place and informed him that he would be leaving on a cargo ship in a few days. He needed a place to stay and he would like to give some lectures. Mr. Bhattacharya immediately began to arrange a few private meetings at friends' homes, where he would sing and Bhaktivedanta Swami would then speak. Mr. Bhattacharya thought the sadhus leaving for America should make an important news story. He accompanied Bhaktivedanta Swami to all the newspapers in Calcutta, the Hindustan Standard, the Amrit Bazar Patrika, the Jugantas, the Statements, and others. Bhaktivedanta Swami had only one photograph, a passport photo. They made a few copies for the newspapers. Mr. Bhattacharya would try to explain what the Swami was going to do, and the news writers would listen. But none of them wrote anything. Finally, they visited the Dainik Basumati, a local Bengali daily, which agreed to print a small article with Bhaktivedanta Swami's picture. A week before his departure, on August 6th, Bhaktivedanta Swami traveled to nearby Mayapur to visit the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Then he returned to Calcutta, where Mr. Bhattacharya continued to assist him with his final business and speaking arrangements. So, on the side, when Srila Prabhupada went to Mayapur to visit the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, how was he went? He went to take permission, get the blessings of his Guru. But then on the way back, he stopped at Shantipur. Shantipur, where Advaita Acharya used to live. And Advaita Acharya and Haridas Thakur would also be there. So he sat there for a long time and he was crying because one pujari from that place later, many years later, told, because Prabhupada at that time, nobody knew him when he was leaving for America. But when he came back with disciples and the movement and so many things going on. So one day this pujari saw Prabhupada's picture. He got this Back to Godhead magazine and he saw this picture of Prabhupada. And he remembered this was the same person. So he told the disciple, the devotees, that I have seen this person somewhere. But then he remembered that Prabhupada, before he was going to leave, So he came and he was crying and crying. And he was begging that, please give me the blessing so that I can carry out the orders of my Guru Maharaj. So that's all he was asking. He just wanted to preach as was ordered by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So Mr. Bhattacharya was assisting him. Mr. Bhattacharya, we just took a hired taxi to this place and that place, and he would go for preaching. I never talked to him during the preaching, but once when I was coming back from the preaching, I said, you said this thing about this, but I tell you it is not this, it is this. I crossed him in something or argued, and he was furious. Whenever we argued, and I said, no, I think this is this. Then he was shouting, he was very furious. He said, you are always saying, I think, I think, I think. What is the importance of what you think? Everything is what you think. But it doesn't matter. It matters what Shastra says. You must follow, I said. I must do what I think, what I feel. That is important. He said, no, you should forget this. You should forget your desire. You should change your habit. Better you depend on the Shastras. You follow what Shastras want you to do and do it. I'm not telling you what I think, but I'm repeating what the Shastra says. So this was another thing that Prabhupada always followed. He never, in any of his books, he never wrote what I think or I believe. No. Whatever scripture says, that's what he just stressed on. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.